Hello and welcome to Fireside Chats at the Influencer Series conducted by the Alchemist Accelerator. These are timely chats with tech leaders about what's on their mind. Let's get into it. Jeffrey, it's so good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
For those that don't know, Jeffrey Akiki is the founder of Not Diamond, which is a dev tool for routing AI models. And you are part of this rare breed of former VC turned operator.
Yeah.
You were a VC at Bolt, which we love at Alchemist because Bolt focuses on hardware VCs. So, it's truly, I think, a missionary-driven VC to usher in more hardware innovation. And then before that, you were also at On Deck, where you were in charge of data-driven growth. Such interesting, eclectic experiences. And now you're doing AI DevOps, basically,
Yep.
which is awesome, too. So, Jeffrey, it's great to have you here. And Jeffrey, can you talk about what you wanted to share or what you shared today as a perspective at the event?
Yeah, absolutely. So today I talked about the proliferation of AI agents and how we can build scalable and adaptive AI agents as well as systems that are suitable for enterprises.
And unpack that. And I'm curious if there's a hot take that you have that would surprise people on that topic.
Yeah, so for me, a lot of people, when you talk about agents, they imagine this magical thing that takes an input and like spits out the final solution. They've built out everything, etc. The way I see it is more it's a network of agents. We're going to have a lot of tiny specialized agents that are really good at collecting the right data. Then that agent is going to work alongside other agents to then provide a final output. So it's not going to be like a one huge very strong, sophisticated agent, but more of a network of agents. One of the anecdotes we like to use at Not Diamond is Yahoo, when it first started, wanted to be the everything website. You would go there to check the weather. You would go there to see the scores on the latest soccer game, as well as read the news. Google took a totally different approach where they built a router that takes a search query and provides you with the search result. So our approach is kind of similar. We're building out a router that automatically leverages the best specific agent or specialized agent or model for every specific use case.
And so it's not a swarm, is it? It's not a swarm of agents. This is sort of an agent optimization. Is that the idea?
It could be a swarm of agents. It could be a swarm of agents, or it could be more of an optimization play. It really depends on each use case. So, in a way, one of our customers is building a customer support app, and they have a lot of very sophisticated agents that are powered by very strong models. Let's say a Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and a lot of the time they get very basic requests, and in that case, leveraging that sophisticated agent for that first will provide a negative output quality because it's a much slower model or pipeline, and it's much more expensive. In many cases, a very basic RAG agent that was trained on the FAQ specific for the company could have handled that query as good as possible. Mm-hmm. But in other cases, you're talking about like, I received the item, it's damaged, but I wanted to return it to and exchange it. If it's a very specific kind of thing that isn't that common, then you're gonna want something like an agent that can reason. So figuring out what to leverage and when is key to building something that's scalable. And especially for enterprises that are worried about putting these probabilistic models into production, having something that's really elaborate and big from the get-go is pretty daunting. You want something that's more modular, that's more transparent, where you can evaluate the different steps and figure out, okay, that worked here, that didn't work here. We know where the problem is coming from. If you have something that's a very complex chain, it becomes harder to dissect and figure out how you can improve. So having a lot of different specialized models instead of gigantic, like agent is easier to manage, easier to evaluate, and maintain. And I'm not saying that there's not going to be these amazing agents. We're already seeing a Devon, for example, for software engineering. But it really, I see it more as like on a spectrum. You're gonna have these autopilot, autonomous agents for very specific tasks, but you're gonna have a lot of, co-pilot and more, specialized smaller agents to handle other basic tasks.
It's sort of like it's either there's the shark big models or like an army of piranhas that
Exactly.
you can, and you're taking the army of piranha approach.
In a way, like our bet is on model divergence. I'm not saying there's not going to be, the OpenAI, the Anthropics, and a lot of companies building very strong agents, but we are already seeing, on Hugging Face alone, there's close to 1 million models on the platform, and models are getting commoditized, and it's easier to fine-tune model. It's easier to build RAG pipelines today. So I do see it more as, like a model divergence kind of.
And so
Future.
if this was the year of the agent, what do you think is going to? If we're sitting here in December of 2025, at the end of next year, what do you think is the next big theme that emerges?
That's a great question. For me, even like looking at when we say the year of the agent is a bit tricky because a lot of the RAG pipelines that we've built, we now call them agents, even though they're technically just a basic RAG pipeline. So I always worry about these terms like RAG was last year, now it's agents, but technically both are still very early on. I think like a multimodality, like we're going to be able to leverage more and more models from different providers in a very seamless way, much more seamlessly than right now. Right now, there is that sense of vendor lock, and people are using just like OpenAI providers. But we are seeing enterprises starting to leverage more and more models and starting to be a little bit braver. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to start to see RAG and agentic workflows in actual production versus the promise of them.
And so you don't think, well, I'm assuming, and so you should correct me if I'm wrong, that all the spoils are going to go to the big?
I don't think so. I think we are seeing how every day a new model gets released that outperforms the state-of-the-art model from the OpenAIs of the world, and that's a very interesting thing because I see a different future than like cloud providers where now you have like a couple of
there's three
layers, and that's it.
Yeah,
exactly,
it converged.
I feel the fact that we're seeing more and more companies veer towards like building their own models or fine-tuning models. Like these companies are going to exist, they're going to make a lot of money, but I think there's a lot of money to be made in and around helping companies build adaptive, scalable, and trustworthy AI for an enterprise setting.
But just to be devil's advocate, why wouldn't the cloud metaphor apply here? Because in the cloud world, what happens is that the big 3 or 4 players, they sit back, and once one of these emergent startups comes up, they'll just build that internally and then commoditize the layer. They're like Costcoizing software. Why wouldn't the same hold true? Where there could be a model that outperforms, but if it's going after a big enough opportunity, it'll just get baked into the roadmap of the big LLMs.
It's a great question, and there's definitely a future. Like there is a possibility that we're going to end up in that future, but we've been seeing how the fact that data isn't evenly distributed. Companies have their own proprietary data. That means they're in a very good position to be able to build their own tools. And tool access where we are today, it's much more democratized. Like it is much easier to leverage some open source frameworks and build out your own internal tools with your own data, own everything in-house, and just, for example, call these different providers when you need to or for specific use cases. I think that's different than in the past where if you wanted to, like data servers are a totally different game, and there was a scalability element to them versus with that data isn't everywhere. Like all of these models are trained on very similar eval data, but they're not really production data that's very relevant to that specific company for that specific use case.
And is there a strategy where it's sort of the David versus Goliath strategy, where if you are betting on the smaller player, that is there strategic sensitivity that can be exploited to outperform the big players? I'm thinking about things like swarming agents together or other things like that.
That's a great observation. And even, for example, our default router, we trained it on these very large eval data set, and then we compared our router to the state-of-the-art models on all the benchmarks that they used whenever they release a new model. And our model, we were able to outperform all of the state-of-the-art models by selecting, the best model at the right time, which meant we ended up saving in cost, because in many cases, for example, we were routing to a Claude 3 Haiku or to a GPT-4o Mini, which ranks as good as the strong model on these specific tasks, but also knowing when to call the 3.5 Sonnet, which is very expensive but very strong in these instances. So we ended up even outperforming the top model, which in that case at the time when we ran the evals was Claude 3.5 Sonnet, by adopting that ensembling of models. So in a way, like a meta model that's comprised of all these models.
So, and is there, I love this idea that there's a meta, that it's like the meta layer, and you can optimize enough on the meta layer to outperform. Is there a certain amount of outperformance that makes it significant to be sustainable?
That's something that we've been spending a lot of time on, because if you're improving by a couple of percentage points, that's not always worth it.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things is we also allow developers to route to their own custom models. So they can build a custom router on their own data, build a very specific groups of fine-tuned models, and route between them and between these large models. So you can end up improving in performance as well as dropping cost by 10x. So that's happening at the same time, which makes it an even more interesting value proposition.
And I know we're coming up on the end of time, but I'm curious because so few people leave the very comfy world of venture to take the red pill and go into the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur. Can you share what you've learned now as an entrepreneur versus as a venture capitalist?
Venture capital is probably one of the most fun jobs ever. You tend to interact with a lot of super smart people on a daily basis and learn about different fields. But I think that aspect is what pushed me to start my own thing, because I really enjoyed, working alongside the founders and building with them, but felt like I'm like that final step. I really want to do that, and that pushed me to go into building my own thing. It definitely, a lot of the insights and a lot of the things that I learned in VC were extremely helpful, but in a way, they were theories that were helpful in guiding me. But I kind of at some point I kind of drew a line, and I'm like, it's hard to use theories to build a company. You have to kind of actually build the company. And some of the things I'm doing kind of go against some of the, best practices when I was in VC. But it's interesting.
And are there any, can you teach the audience if there are any lessons from VC that you have held to be valuable as an entrepreneur?
I think, I'm not sure if it sounds really good, but treating everything as sales. VC is ultimately sales.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people forget that when you're founding a company, you are technically head of sales.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing every single day. In the beginning, you're kind of selling the idea, trying to get some pilots in play. Then you're selling that MVP, etc. So I think VC helped me kind of hone in and improve my sales skills and networking and meeting people, etc. And that has helped me massively at Not Diamond as well.
Terrific. And Jeffrey, we're coming out of time, and the way that we've been experimenting with ending these is to invite you to share a 6-word takeaway of advice to an aspiring entrepreneur going into AI. So in 6 words or less, that's the challenge.
6 words or less.
If there's anything that you would want to impart to an aspiring entrepreneur in AI.
Build and not plan as much.
Oh, that's good. Build and not plan as much. That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was fun.
It was fun. It was fun. It was great.
Yeah.
And that's our show. Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more discussions as well. You can also check out our website, alchemistaccelerator.com, to learn more about the Alchemist Startup Accelerator program and to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.